just going to touch on a couple of things. Hey, Dawson.
Hey.
I looked at the stats. I don't know if anybody looks at their Realtor magazine or not, but I thought there was some pretty interesting stats. And I mean, obviously, this issue the November, December issue only reflects back on up to September. But our absorption rate in September of 21 was 125%. Our absorption rate in September of 22, 46% on single family, 106 and 38% respectively on condos. So obviously the churn rate on listings has slowed, by 65%, something like that. However, interestingly enough, sales volume's down about 40%, but median price is up 14% for single family. For townhouses and condos down about 30%, and median price up about 25%. So, I think they're stats that people want to know, because I do think that for all intents and purposes, the absorption rate has dropped all year. It started in June. The absorption rate started dropping at or about 50 to 60% across the board. At the same time, the number of listings is not going up considerably. So and by the way, Pasco stats are similar, with the exception of their median price is actually up only about 17% and 25%. So Pinellas, Pasco County, looking at similar market stats. But there's not a lot of new listings. So we're still only at like a 60, not even a 60-day supply of listings. So it's still theoretically a seller's market. And then the percentage that they're selling at to list price is 98%. So I think, again, the interesting stat there that I would point to is the fact that, if you went back as late as closings in May, people were probably paying somewhere between 105 and 125% of list to purchase a house. Now they're paying 98% of list. So what market would a buyer rather, prefer to buy in? I mean, I would think this one. And I think it's important to let buyers know that whatever they're waiting for, it may make sense to wait for a different property, but I don't know that it makes sense to wait for a different market. So, and we've talked about this in weeks past, what's there to gain? I just don't know what there is to gain. If property values are still flat or like right now, they're still showing an appreciation. If property values are still appreciating, but even if you argue that they go flat and interest rates continue to rise, where's the value in waiting? There is none. And again, I've seen it in quite a few different gifts out there, and I know Sydney sent out a comparison as well. As late as May, and in some of these they're wrong, because I saw Dan Joyce published one that I don't believe the stat was right, because it showed the difference of buying 6 months ago and today. So it was a spinoff of what Sydney did. 6 months ago, houses listed for 400. You might have to pay 450 or more to get it, right? Today, houses listed at 450, you may pay 435 to get it. But it used a comparison of 10% down. And it said, well, 450, 10% down is 45 grand. But 6 months ago, 10% down wasn't 45 grand. 10% down 6 months ago was 45 grand plus the overage, because there was appraisal gaps that people were catching up on. So it would cost you $95,000 in down payment versus $45,000 in down payment, arguably, on that example, for what would amount to be about a $200 or $300 difference in mortgage payment if you're getting a mortgage. I don't know. For me, if you do the math on that, let's just use a nice round number, $300 a month more, and instead of $45,000 extra out of your pocket, it takes 150 months to get to that point. Most people don't own their houses 150 months, number one. Number two, somewhere in that 150 months, you're probably going to refinance. So, this is I'm rehashing an old story, but I think it's really critical that you look at that and you have that talking point. So, when I saw the Pinellas County stats, I just thought that they really reiterated that tale and the importance of having that conversation, when you get the opportunity to communicate with somebody. Then, and this goes, I'm gonna lead into the next part of it. Does anybody have any questions on that or any thoughts on that, or have they tried using that at all? Anybody, anything before I move on?
No.
Okay. So I don't know if everybody saw it, but I posted it yesterday, or we posted it Friday. Dean Ribble, Dean and Terry, hit the $500,000 mark. I think last year he hit 475. So I think, $500,000 this year is probably way more impressive than 475 last year. And very honestly, he didn't have a great start to the year if you look at his numbers. So I think, again, and I've kind of alluded to this a couple times in like either posts or updates or videos. I think it's really important not to get caught up on market, and how it's going to affect your business. Market.
Tony, I'm
Yes.
sorry. I'm going to mute myself. My customer that I've been working with is calling.
That's fine. Market does not have anything to do with what you can accomplish. It has to do with what your pitch is. It has to do with the knowledge that you need to secure to be able to have those conversations. And I don't care what kind of sales you're in, that's always true, right? You're always evolving your pitch. Now, I am not naive, and I am not even remotely suggesting that certain markets aren't harder to sell in than others. When you're in a transitioning market like this, from a hyper heated market to what I consider to be a more traditional market, and the consumer is getting inundated with information that is only partially accurate, right? Or 100% negative and partially accurate. Does that make the job of you as the real estate salesperson tougher? Yes, of course it does. But are you leading the sheep or the sheep leading you? That becomes the question, right? And I think that's like, and again, I think you could say it pertains to our business, but it can be much more generalized into sales in the sales industry on a whole. That this is a question mark for us daily, right? Not just as it pertains to market. What happened in your life yesterday or this morning that's going to impact how you work today? How did you get ready for your job today versus, if you're in a bad mood, you're in a bad state of mind, you've got a distraction, you've got an illness, all these things happen, right? So it's the daily challenge that we present to ourselves as salespeople. But in every market, somebody succeeds and somebody fails. That's just a fact. I was in the car business for 15 years, up in Pennsylvania and New Jersey before Florida, where November, December, January were horrendous months in the car business. Always had great months. Why? Because every other salesperson would huddle somewhere where it was warm, and I would stand outside with my coat on or sit in the car with the car on and looking for somebody to pull on the lot. So, it's the mindset with which you're going to attack it. And you have to find whatever that motivation is for you to be able to be in attack mode all the time. Right. And look, I can't sit here and tell anybody what their goals should be. And we've talked about that in the past, but you got to have some kind of goals. And Dean Ribble, Dean Kutramanis is sitting in front of me. So I just want to be clear on that. Dean Ribble woke up this year on a mission. And part of that mission was that he was not Associate of the Year last year, I don't believe. I think he came in second to Kim Adams. And I think, that was his motivating factor. Some people are motivated by that. Some people aren't. And I'm not saying that's a positive or negative. It was a friendly competition. There was no ill will there whatsoever. And he was hell bent on hitting. He missed that $500,000 mark. He was hell bent on hitting that $500,000 mark. And the guy hits it from, 8:30 in the morning till probably about 4:00 in the afternoon outside of appointments and stuff like that. And he has a routine that he goes through, and anybody that's ever spent any time up in Palm Harbor hears him on the phone. It's somewhere between insanity, hysterical, and, flat out amazing. Like, I don't know which one it is, and it could be any of the three on any given day or a combo thereof. What's that?
Combination.
Yeah, it's a combination. But he's pounding the phone. The guy from Monday to Friday, and there's time off in there. Like, let's not exaggerate. But the guy from Monday to Friday is hell bent on either being on an appointment or finding somebody to try and schedule an appointment with. That's what he does. That's his day. I'm either on an appointment or finding somebody to have an appointment with. And he spends, I don't know, $3,000 to $5,000 a month on advertising or whatever. So, I bet you out of that $500,000, he probably keeps one 250 to 3. I would say probably 3 to 350 of it is probably the right number. And I think that's about right. About 65% is probably right. You're probably going to spend 35% on your business in different categories. But he's been thriving as the market shifted. He shifted his conversation. Listen, he was complaining as much about, the buyers being on the sidelines because they didn't have the 40 or 50 grand to put down, 6 months ago, as he's fighting right now to explain the very things we talked about. So I start with that premise because I think it's critical for I think it's critical if you are going to be successful without restriction. And when I say that, I mean successful as defined by you, not by me, right? Success is defined by you as an individual on whatever it is you want to do. If you're going to be successful, you have to first accept premise one is that we are in a sales industry. We are not in a customer service industry. And I think there is, for some, that becomes a dilemma, right? They don't want to look at them for whatever reason. I don't know why. They don't want to look at themselves as being a salesperson. Well, we're salespeople that sell real estate for a living, and you've heard me say this before. Being a realtor basically says that you are a member of an organization. A realtor is not a profession. It's a designation. So there are realtors out there that look at this as a service-only business. There's folks like me out there that look at it as a sales-only business. And then there's probably some that have a feeling of somewhere in between. But why do I stress that as part of the agenda? Because I believe in a traditional market, you have to be on point. I mean, I think that a monkey could have sold some houses in the last, the 12 months prior to May. If you got the right buyer, heated marketplace, you didn't have to tell a story. The market told the story and it was everywhere. That's what I mean by that, right? Today, you have to guide and advise the customer, and you have to have a closing mentality. And here's why that's critical. So when you look at why would somebody think about this for a minute? There's still not enough inventory, even for the amount of if you want to talk about the reduced production that's out there over 6 months ago, there's still not enough inventory. We were working on 120, we're now selling 50% of the properties on the market. And that absorption rate's relatively average from 125% 6 months ago or 5 months ago. So when you talk about, let's generalize and say there are objections out there that by the consumer to making a decision. Like, why do you think if we still don't have, if there's still more buyers than inventory, why are we not selling? Why are people not selling houses? Does anybody want to take a gander here? Take a shot.
Say that question one more time.
Why do you think you see this when there's still a lack of inventory?
Mm-hmm.
Why then is the absorption rate dropping like it is? Now, I have the luxury of knowing what people are saying that are like feedback on listings. I don't know that you do.
Mm-hmm.
Does anybody have a clue what the single biggest thing that we're hearing is feedback on listings that are being shown? No. Single biggest thing we hear over and over again is, well, my buyer's just thinking about it. They loved it. They're thinking about it. So I would ask anybody on the call. I got Jerry here, Dawson here, Dean here, Sydney here. If you hear that, I want to think about it. I want to wait. They're the two things you're going to hear. We've talked about the objection of rate and the talk about the objection of market. I don't feel the need to really reiterate that. But if you hear, I'm going to think about it, I'm comfortable waiting. And you've done your investigation properly. You've explained market to them. What's your gut? What's your reaction to that? Anybody willing to share? Go ahead, Dean. Dean's willing.
I'm not getting that.
Okay.
I'm getting. We have 3 listings, and the showings, the people coming, scheduling on showing time with other agents. It's like August, September, the faucet was flowing like big time with people coming to see properties, and October, November, the faucet just turned off. So we're not even getting people. Just to give you an example, I've had one show, got an offer, had one showing in the last 2 weeks on a Clearwater listing that we have, and we have it listed at $479. Got an all cash offer at $400,000. So they came $70,000 off, right, thinking that we're in a discounted market, which I had to go back and explain to the agent. This happened on Tuesday that, I'm not sure what market your client, which was her sister, thinks that we're in, but go take a look at the comps, do your homework, take a look at the comps and educate your sister. We need to be, in this ballpark. Even Zillow has it listed, right around where we have it. And we know that their algorithm is off. So we got it, she came up, she got it, and she came up, but her highest and best was still at 440, which is still a huge gap. That's one showing in 2 weeks. that I've had. I've got one just went live today, so I can't really say anything about that, but it's in the same neighborhood. I got another listing in Palm Harbor right down the street from the office. And we have had 2 showings, 2 weeks on the market, 2 showings. And no objection with regard to, no, there's zero objection with regard to pricing on that or anything like that, or people saying I'm gonna wait. It's for the first time in 2 years now, I've seen complaints about, oh, the size isn't right, or this isn't right, where before people were just like, it didn't matter if it was 1,300, 1,400, 1,500, 1,600, redone, remodeled home, new roof, new AC, new appliances, new this and that, boom, buy it. Like, and now they're like, it's a couple hundred square feet too small, it's this, it's that, it's, don't like the layout of that. It's like people are becoming more, again, in a more normalized market, they're starting to nitpick on stuff versus we'll take it type of deal.
Yeah, and I think so touching on, and I think they're excellent points because they all tie into what the point I'm trying to make. So let's try and hit a couple of those just independently and what my gut reaction is to all of them. So I believe that in a tradition, we had 2 things that are going on here, or 3 actually. Got a market shift, number 1.
Mhm.
So then you got to go back and you can't compare the last 2 years. You got to go, what's a traditional market? Well, we tend to slow down around now, December, January. The other thing that happens in a traditional market is election years tend to slow down a little early. People get distracted. I don't know why, because I don't think that everybody's a political junkie. I don't believe that. But historically, 23 years in this business, on election cycle years, we tend, instead of slowing down in November, we tend to slow down in October, right? And then you got to fight that.
That's 100% accurate, just so you know.
Yeah.
Not just in the real estate industry,
Everything.
or in the restaurant industry.
So
as
everything.
well. And you will see people during an election year cycle, especially presidential.
It's even
People
magnified.
up north do not come down till afterwards, usually 2nd, 3rd week of October.
Yep.
Unless now it'll be after Thanksgiving.
Yep.
Right. So you get a month delay because people are staying up north, making sure that they vote.
Correct.
Or do whatever.
100%. So you've got that, right? And then when I hear Dean say, I've got a $480,000 listing and I'm getting a showing a week. Listen, traditional market prior to the surge, you'd be like high-fiving. Because if you had a $500,000 listing prior to the surge, you're looking normally at, 2 to 3 showings a month. That's all you get. Because why? You don't have that, it's more local now. I mean, I truly believe we're back to a more localized market. So, all those things that it's an adjustment for the buyer, the seller, the agent. It's an adjustment for everybody. And that's why we're taking the time to do this stuff, because I think that when it happens to you alone, whether it be Dean or Kristen or Jerry, you're like, holy shit, is this just me? What's wrong with my listing? And you need somebody to remind you that, well, it's October, it's an election year. That's pretty normal, right? So, but here's what's really critical. You got to be telling your seller this, because you know what? A 440, although a 440 offer on the 400, forget, that's stupid. That's somebody taking a shot, and that happens in a traditional market. But a 440 number on a 480 listing, that's a number you got to think about, because we don't know if we're going to keep appreciating at 15% or are we going to depreciate 5%. I don't know. If the Fed does what they say they're going to do and continue to raise rates, the buyer, and if they're not paying cash, they got a threshold on payment. So that affects what they're willing to spend or what they're going to spend. And then you are going to get more just when you're working with local buyers, you're going to get more discernment. You're going to get people that now are, you don't have, again, think about this. We were selling houses in May to people that had an extra 50 grand to plop down so they could get the one they wanted. And it didn't matter what it was, right? Now you're dealing with people that are spending their last dime. I know what we're doing on mortgages. What Sydney's doing on mortgages to get people over the finish line. These are people that are like, they're jumping through hoops to be able to buy a house. So they're going to be more discerning. And you've honestly got to be willing to accept that as a reality and embrace it. And that's why I go to the understanding we are in a sales industry, right? So and I think Dean makes, without even realizing he does, he makes my point for me. When you're working, if you're in a listing situation and you're the listing agent, you're still selling somebody. You're selling that cooperating agent on your perspective and your seller's perspective. And if you're not willing to accept the fact that they're not probably sitting in a round table discussing this and they're left to their own devices, you hear it over and over again. They don't know what to do. They don't know what to say. They're just reading headlines like their customers. They're not willing to. And if they're in the customer service mindset, they're not willing to advance the conversation beyond that. They're afraid. There's people in our group that are afraid of disagreeing with the customer's perspective. Well, unless you 100% agree with what they're saying, you better be willing to tell them that you disagree and why. And I'm sorry, there's no other way to put it. That's sales. That's sales 101. Helping somebody understand what reality is when they may be getting bad information. So everything that Dean explains to me, I was looking at it from a buyer's perspective. He explains it exceptionally well on where the responsibility lies as a real estate salesperson from a listing agent's perspective. And I got to tell you something. If you're working with a buyer, you better think like a listing agent and enlighten your buyer to what they're up against. And if you're working with a listing, you got to enlighten your listing to what the buyer's thinking, because half the time they're not thinking like that. And frankly, they might be going to buy a house right after they get done selling theirs, and you're going to be having the same conversation anyway. So I think it was an excellent point, and I'm glad he made it on the listing side. On the buyer side, if somebody's saying to me, I'm going to wait, look, if I know I've done a good interview, if I know I've done a good job of finding the property that they should buy, right? So this isn't the case where Dean is my buyer and he says to me, look, I got a 3-bedroom house. I need a 4-bedroom house. I got 1,500 square feet. I'm looking for 2,000 square feet. Look, if all you can go find is a 1,700 square foot house with a 3-bedroom with an office, you're going to show it, right? If you're stuck on budget, which a lot of times you might be, you may have to get that person to do one of two things. You may have to get that person to either accept less house for the same money or expand their market area to get what they need. So in other words, if they want to afford at 2,000 square feet at $500,000 in Eastlake, that may not happen, but they may be able to go up into Pasco and get the same thing, but they didn't want to go to Pasco. Well, you got to introduce them to that. And here's the thing. You can't do that like a punch in the face. You can't do it that way. You can't say to them on the phone, well, you're crazy. You can't get that in Pinellas. Let's go up to Pasco. Because they're going to look for somebody to lie. Like, you got to walk them down a path. This is the sales part. You find 3 or 4 houses. You find ones that are close in Eastlake. You find 2 or 3 in Pasco. And at least you introduce it to them. And you kind of let it become their idea. right? And then if you're working with the buyer and they're telling you that, hey, I'm going to wait for this and I'm going to wait for that, or you got to be willing to go, what the hell are you waiting for? But you only earn that right. You only earn that right if you've done the right investigation and you've taken the time. What are you waiting for? What do you like? What do you hope to gain by waiting? What, like, give me somebody, anybody on the call, give me an example of something that, like I said, I go back to, I want to wait and I got to think. Well, you should know if you've shown them the right house or not. You should know. If you don't, you got to reinvestigate your investigation conversation. But if you've walked through a property and you know it's the right one, and somebody says that they want to wait, what do you say? What's anybody say to them?
What are you waiting for?
Yeah, it's just like that. What are you waiting for?
It's funny to say, honestly, to me, but it's true. You have to say it.
Yeah, it's the same thing if you're going to list a house. I'm going to wait a month. Why? What's going to happen between now and a month from now? Why? Do you want to sell your house? Yes, then the buyer might be there today. He may not be there a month from now. So that's the other part of sales, is you creating the timeline. Now, look, don't get me wrong. If you are talking to somebody on the phone and they're in Indiana and they're not coming down till January, you can't create that timeline. Unless, of course, you found the absolute perfect house. You go and video it. It's one of a kind. Look, the likelihood of that is slim and none, right? If you get lucky, right after you sell that one, go buy a lottery ticket, right? Because that's a fact. We're not that lucky usually. But, if you're on a call with somebody, right? If you're on a call with somebody, like, get them out tomorrow, get them out the next day, right? And if you've shown them the right house, then ask for the offer. And if they're giving you objections, try and overcome the objections, right? If you didn't find the right house, schedule the next attempt. Don't just follow up. Don't leave it to my next phone call. You should never leave a phone call without an appointment or a time for your next phone call. You should never leave an appointment without a contract or your next scheduled appointment. These are simple, achievable goals that if you execute on, right, your results will be better. Your closing ratios will be better. There's nothing that we talk about, and this is not, you quit this business tomorrow and go sell cars. Doesn't matter, or go sell mattresses, or go sell whatever you want to sell. The rules apply. The same rules apply. The rule number one, buyers are liars. The consumer is afraid to tell you the truth, right? They're afraid of you. They don't look at you as an ally. They are using you. I hate to break everybody's chops. The consumer is using you. They did not call you or ask you for advice so that you could become their buddy. They didn't. Now, are there a percentage of people that they might become your disciples, you might become friends? Yeah, it happens. And again, God bless that when that happens, that's great. That's a bonus. Excuse me. That's a bonus to the transaction. But when you meet a person, a consumer, a lead, you're turning them into a customer. It's transactional. You are going to serve a purpose for them. They are going to serve a purpose for you. It's a transactional relationship. And I'll tell you what else. There's very little loyalty within that transactional relationship. if you don't deliver. If you don't deliver. And part of delivering is having difficult conversations in a way that are conversations, not antagonistic. I can give you an example right now. Agent in our group that worked his tail off with a buyer over the phone, scheduled an appointment. The buyer kind of got wonky when he got here, started spreading the area around and, you know, doing the Zillow thing and all that, right? And what the agent said to the buyer in substance was 100% correct. Look, hire me to use the job, to do a job. If you're going to go on Zillow, you're going to be disappointed because you can't get all the facts that I can get for you. You know, let me do my job. What the buyer heard was, oh, you don't want to work with me? Right? Where you've got to think to yourself and you got to be strategic. And I'm the first to admit it. If I'm in your shoes, I am not sitting here in any way, shape, or form going, hey, drive to Valrico, drive to Bradenton, drive to Palmetto, drive to, hell, I don't even know that I would drive to Spring Hill. I know a lot of you will, right? And I commend you for it, right? But I would have a market area that I was good at, that I knew like the back of my hand. Like, it's funny, we went down to Kim Adams has a fall party. Michelle and I stopped down at it on Friday night, and we were driving through Tarpon Springs. And how many people, what's the last time anybody on this call actually drove through Tarpon Springs? Not down the sponge docks, drove through Tarpon Springs,
They
where
had a,
people live.
they had a festival last weekend, so a lot of people.
Where at?
Down by the, where the library is, where, you know.
Right. But I'm
Mm.
talking about down like off of Mears, down off of Florida Avenue, down off of Peninsula, right? We drove through there, we were laughing because like 23 years ago, that's where we made our living, right there,
Mhm.
right there.
Hmm.
You know, in a 2 or 3 mile radius, right? And then you expand, you know, like you gotta be able to, this is a traditional market. To be a salesperson, you gotta have product knowledge. Your product is houses. Your product is neighborhoods. Your product is areas. So that when a customer gives you the objection, right, that you can have a reasonable conversation. And then you have limits. You set limits on yourself. 100% you set limits, right? And if it gets outside that limit, you own it. Listen, Sydney, while I'd love to take you to Spring Hill, I don't have a fucking clue what I'm going to show you in Spring Hill. I don't know. But what I can tell you is I partner with realtors in Spring Hill that do know what Spring Hill is. And if that's where I'd like to show you the houses that I think fit your needs here. If you want to go to Spring Hill, I'll get you with the right agent up there. Some of something is better than none of nothing,
Mhm.
right? But this, like, it is so hypercritical right now that you fine tune these skills, that you go back to the basics. And I know we all have favorite areas. What's your favorite area, Kristen? I know what the answer. Yeah, St. Pete. Dean, what's your favorite area?
Feather Sound, Palm Harbor.
All right. Jerry, what's your favorite area?
Probably East Lake.
Okay. Mary, what's your favorite area?
Dunedin.
Okay. So I'm going to ask everybody, when's the last time you ventured out of your favorite area? Without reason.
I've been all over Tony for 2 weeks trying to find this guy a condo, and I.
With reason. That's with reason.
Mhm.
That's with reason.
Okay.
So without reason, just took a ride. Let's see what's available for sale. Let's go in the MLS. Let's pick 4 or 5 houses, see what's up for sale. Let's go see what 350 buys now, what 400 buys now, what 450 buys. Let's pick a $350,000 house in Palm Harbor, one in Oldsmar, one in Clearwater, one in Tarpon Springs, one in Holiday. Let's just go look at those houses. Let's physically get in them and see what they look like. Like, if I had a buyer,
Yeah.
you know, so that you become sharp. Like that, like, and I don't know, I haven't done it, so I'm not gonna sit here and like, I know you're doing the buy owners. That's why I love buy owners. It would force me, when I was working the buy owner game, it forced me into the marketplace without a consumer, without a buyer. Because if I was going to, like, you know, if I was going to go look at a buy owner in Woodfield, I learned about Woodfield before I got there. If I was going to go look at a buy owner off of Mears, I'd look at everything available for sale over Mears. And I was like, because I was working that avenue, if you called me on a Palm Harbor house and you wanted 350, I knew what I could show you. I didn't have to do a search. I didn't know the exact street address, because it would change from day to day, week to week, month to month. But I knew what 350 bought me in Palm Harbor. And I could say, hey, Dean, you want 2,000 square feet? You know, look, I'll see what I can find the last few. Here's the difference. Am I going to say, Dean, I can't find you 2,000 square feet in Palm Harbor for 350? Am I going to say that to you?
No.
No. But I am going to say, Dean, I don't know what's available right now. I'm going to go check. I can tell you this. I am an expert in the North Pinellas area. And the last few houses I've sold in Palm Harbor for 350 came in at about 1,300 or 1,400 square feet. I've had buyers like you that either were willing to go down in square footage, or we looked at like the Clearwater area and the Tarpon Springs area, which are very similar to Palm Harbor, but I can get you closer to what you're looking for there. So would it be all right with you if I looked at a couple of those and lined up a couple of those to show you those and give you, even if you don't like them, man, you know, within 3 or 4 hours, we're going to be able to look at three to 5 houses. I'm going to have a really good idea of what you like and what you don't like. And, you know, I might be able to figure out why. And would you mind telling me, why is Palm Harbor important to you?
Schools.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Yeah, they've got good schools, but fortunately, North Pinellas has a lot of good schools too, and we could get you those, help you get those school reports. But so is it? Could I ask you, Dean? Is the size of the house? Would you be willing to sacrifice size of house for schools, or is the size of the house more important to you?
I'm going to sacrifice size of the house for schools.
All right, fair enough. But how many times do you drill down like that? Because I think it's easy to get off of that. I think it's really easy. I think it's really easy, especially in a traditional market, to panic. I'm gonna reverse roles. I'm a listing agent. I haven't seen a showing on my damn property for 2 weeks. And now I got a call on it. And it doesn't meet the call's criteria. I panic. I got to figure out what to do. And it takes me completely off my game. Right. And you know, if you're anybody on this call and you're looking at the market has shifted since May, where all you did was talk to people and try to figure out who had money to be able to pay over list price. And now you're sitting around, you know, you might get to talk to 2 people a week if you're lucky. You're probably, and I say this myself, so I'm not being disrespectful. You're probably not as sharp. You're probably not as ready for the call because you're probably doing something else. Right? And then you panic. Right? And panic doesn't mean you hang up the phone and you're like, God dang it, I forgot to do that. I forgot to do this. I forgot to do this. Right? And then what happens then? Then we beat ourselves up. We don't want to take the next phone call. And it's the downward spiral of the sales psychology. So how do you fight that? Anybody, how do you fight those like in a traditional market, these things that we're talking about, how do you fight it?
Listen, everybody's gonna be different.
Yeah.
But for me, it's a mindset. It's the entrepreneurial mindset, bottom line. It's, you can't take that rejection to say, you just gotta move on. You gotta, you
How
gotta
many people are in it?
push forward, bottom line.
5 of us, Pam, welcome aboard. And there's 5 people here, so. Yeah, it's a great look at,
You just can't. Rejection, as an entrepreneur, rejection is something that you live with every single day, right? You just have to be able to overcome that, to move forward, push through it. It's not the end of the world.
let me ask you, because you're an experienced guy and you've come about this business. You have an interesting perspective because you sell residential. You've had massive experience in commercial. Your wife sells residential. Your brother does both. What's a typical day for you?
That's a loaded question.
I know.
Because we've got 20 million things going on.
Right. So what's a typical day for you?
So wake up probably about 7 a.m. and depends on the day. Most days, like Mondays, is first part of the day is all real estate, catching up from the weekend, all of our commercial leads, everything that came in on the business brokerage side. And then try to schedule whatever appointments I have to get done on a Monday, Wednesday, or Friday are typically my real estate days. And then on a Tuesday, Thursday, it's a whole different ballgame because I'm at the university, right? But there's still things going on there. Then my brother, a little bit different on that side because he's at the restaurant and he's able to, in his downtime there, off time there, focus on what we've got going on. That's why we typically work a lot of our investment properties together, John and I. Dawn does her thing, right? She's out doing her networking and her day, is going to lunch with people, her core group of people and trying to get, listings, buyers, and whole 9 yards.
So,
It's a different,
but
our story is a little bit different.
but I don't think it is. I think that's the important part, right? I think that's why I asked you, because I knew it was a loaded question, right? I'll ask Sydney, what's your day like?
Well, I mean, that also depends on the day, but like on a Monday, I guess Monday's a good example. So I think wake up by like 7:30-ish. Usually we walk the dogs. And then usually I have my day pretty much mapped out from Friday if I know anything was hanging here from the weekend. If not, make sure I have a checklist person. So checklist of what I need to do. These meetings are pretty consistent. So from here, then I would check on anything that's scheduled to close this week, make sure that that's all wrapped up. And then moving on from active loans, move on to anything from the weekend that needs to either be disclosed or followed up on. As far as contracts go, and then depending on how that goes, move on to contacting any other leads or referral sources.
Okay. Kristen, what's your typical day?
I don't really feel like I have a typical day.
Fair enough. That's a good answer. Mary, what's your typical day?
First thing I do, you probably can't see this, my phone.
I can see it.
Okay, that's my list just for today. Every day I have to do this first thing. I prioritize, who I need to call, who I need to email, all the things that I already know, so I won't forget, and I prioritize them. And then hopefully I get them all done today. If I don't get them done today, then they roll over till tomorrow. And I mean, a lot of my list is like, call the title company, call this, property management team, because I got to get this guy approved. And of course I do work another job too. So, I mean, I got to call some snow plowers today up in Chicago. So that's on my list too, unfortunately.
Yeah. So the cool thing about that, right? Like, and again, an exercise. So I think two critical things. And we are very fortunate in our business. Some industries you could be a salesperson in it, but you can't be an entrepreneur, That's just a fact, right? In our industry, you get either the best of both worlds or the worst of both worlds, depending on how you look at it. And what I hear across the board for the most part is everybody is unique in their approach to their business, right? And I think that's critically important because in a traditional market, which we are in, if you're looking for a silver bullet, right, you're not going to find one. You're not going to be able to go, Kristen can't do business the way Dean does business. Dean can't do business the way Mary does business. You know, Jerry's not going to do business the way I do business. But I do think that there's a critical part about having a routine for you on a daily, weekly, monthly basis. And the only thing I didn't hear, and I don't know, I don't know that the question allowed for the elaboration on it or not, is, are you holding yourself accountable to attainable goals when it comes to production? And this is where panic must set in. You cannot panic when you're talking to a consumer, but you better panic if you're not meeting your goals. Now, panic doesn't mean hair on fire, go get it. You know, I've heard people with mega years experience, you know, go into a little rough patch and go, man, I might have to go get a job. No, you don't go get a job. You go back to the basics that got you where you are, right? So panic is, you can't have, there's two things you cannot have as a real estate salesperson. You can't have a aimless objective. If you are waking up on a daily, weekly, monthly basis and saying, whatever the day holds, it holds. If you're waking up like that, you need to go get a job because you need somebody to tell you what to do. That's not what we do. We are real estate salespeople / entrepreneurs, or entrepreneurial real estate salespeople. Probably a better way to put it, I would say. And if you are an entrepreneurial real estate salesperson, then you need to have some targets for you. I can sit here and tell you and say it without judgment, right? That if I'm actively selling, I don't give a shit what the market is. I'm looking for a deal a week. That's me. I got to have a deal a week. Now, I'm going to tell you one thing. A deal a week means 8 closings a month, because I'm giving the buyer to my mortgage guy, I'm giving the seller to my title company. I got complete control because that's what I need to have to ensure my success. Dean, what did you say? And I hope I'm not putting you on the spot. Dean and Sydney, the Kuchermanis group, they've been very successful with Sydney and vice versa. What did you say about your closing? And I'm not saying anybody doesn't feel this way. What did you say about your closing on Friday?
Happy to share that. It's that if it was a challenging closing because the buyer was young and an entrepreneur and had a lot of obstacles to overcome. If I was not working with Sydney, who was literally either on the phone with me or the lender for like the entire week, we would never have gotten the deal closed on Friday. No ands, ifs, or buts about it. So it's a challenging buyer because of his particular situation, and having Sydney knowing that if I picked up the phone and called or I text, it was either an immediate pickup or an immediate text response. If I didn't have that relationship, which you don't with any other lenders that we're not using, deal doesn't get closed, don't know what happens. The seller and the seller's agents were beyond obnoxious. They were obnoxious because the seller was obnoxious. She didn't want to leave. She didn't want to leave from her home, and there was issues there. So she was looking for a reason, you know, to grab some dough and to move on. So we made it happen. 4:34 PM, we closed.
Yeah. And look, look, I always share that, like, again, because it's having these strategies, having trust built. And if you don't look, I'm saying this, if you don't like Sydney or you don't like it, because I say this because this is being taped. If you don't like Sydney, well, no, it is personality. If you don't trust Sydney with the deal, and you think somebody else is going to do a better job, then you should go that. But they better be vested. I think we're hoping to get it clear to close on another deal today that was a situation where the other LO, had no clue what they were doing, and literally almost cost a salesperson in our group $900,000 worth of sales.
Mm.
So look, if you, this is my point in this. This is why I wanted to stress the fact, and I should have put it in the post because I talked about being salespeople, but being entrepreneurial real estate salespeople. You got to wake up. And now I'm going to use Dean as an example. Again, I got lucky that he was here today. Look, Dean works real estate Monday, Wednesday, Friday, right? That's when he works. Yeah, and the weekends. But I mean, he knows Tuesdays and Thursdays, his focus is elsewhere. Okay. But when he's he's got a plan on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. What do you know where your GCI for your group? I know what it is, but do you know where your GCI for your group's going to come in this year?
I have no idea.
Yeah, it's pretty. It's impressive. It's an impressive number. I won't put it out there. It's an impressive number, and they all do it differently, right? But you got to understand that if you function as an entrepreneurial real estate salesperson, if you're prepared every day and you have a vision and a plan of action, and you execute it every day, right? The market is absolutely flat out irrelevant. The obstacles, for the most case, can be overcome, and it can be done in a time frame that is acceptable to you. When a buyer tells you they're 6 months out, if you're not asking them, why you're waiting 6 months and what if I found you the perfect house today, you're not even taking an attempt at moving up the timeline. If you get on a phone call with somebody that's local and you're not trying to set an appointment, that's the first close. Let's get an appointment. I didn't say let's go buy a house. Let's go get an appointment. Because I can't sell you shit over the phone or over the internet. Can't do it. Right? But how many people, and you don't have to answer this question, how many people are attacking every opportunity with that vengeance? And then, look, traditional marketplace. Do you have a traditional marketplace plan in place? Some budget for buyer leads, open houses, direct mail, depending on your budget, you got to create a strategy that puts you in front of 3 or 4 people a week. Put you in front. Now, hear what I say. Put you in front of 3 or 4 people a week. That's got to be your goal. Your goal can't be, I want to sell 72 houses this year. Your goal's got to be, I got to talk to 2 or 3 people a week, 4 people a week. Talk to physically, that's why I like open houses. That's why I like buy owners. If I go to an open house or I go to a buy owner, I am going to physically engage a human being. More likely than not, I'm going to engage a human being. And whether they're successful or not, they're going to make you sharper when you're on the phone. Right? If I'm on the phone, when can I meet you? When can I show you some houses? When I'm in an open house, is this the open house for you? When can I show you a few others? If I'm on a buy owner appointment, why are you not listing with an agent? Yeah, whatever your pitch is. Whatever your pitch is. That's entrepreneurial real estate sales. And going for the jugular. When you're in front of that buy owner, are you ready to list right now? Why not? When you were the buyer, do you like this house? Great, let's write a contract. Why not? What are you waiting for? And then being able to overcome those objections. If you're not challenging yourself, look, I exaggerate probably not for me, but I exaggerate the way you do it to make the point, right? But I'll be very honest with you. If Mary's sitting in front, if I'm out showing Mary houses, I'm like, Mary, you want to buy one? That seemed like the one you described to me on the phone. What don't you like about it? What's the problem? I don't like the paint. Great. I'll buy you a paintbrush. I'm not going to find you a house with perfect paint. I'm not going to find you a house with perfect paint, Mary. Well, I don't like the flooring either. Probably the same thing. If we're looking for the perfect house with the perfect color, with the perfect flooring in the perfect neighborhood, you need to raise your budget 200 grand. Would you rather be flexible? Because you're still going to have to paint and carpet that one too, by the way. I'm having that conversation. I am not exaggerating. If you listen to me on the phone with people, and Sydney's a little bit like that now, that on the mortgage side, you have to have that conversation. I understand you don't like the rate, but you don't have the cash. I'm sorry that you didn't pay your fucking bills. You got a 640 credit score. Your rate's higher. I'm sorry. We'll refinance you later. You know, I mean, it's not like, well, I understand. It's tough. You want to shop me? Go ahead. It's not that.
3, 2, 1 buy downs.
Or that. But your customers never have any money to buy it down. Can't buy it down without cash.
Seller concession.
Yes. What if the seller's not willing to give you a concession, Dan? Let's do it. Seriously. I appreciate that feedback. What if the seller's not willing to give you a concession? Then what?
In this market, I think that they're a little bit more willing to negotiate.
What if they're not? That's the whole purpose of this call. What if they're not? And it's the right house.
My house is a good example. My dream home, no concession. They came way down, but there was absolutely no concession to be had.
Right.
Literally. There was no way they were gonna do it.
Right.
Let's find a different house.
Why?
Why?
Is it thank you. That's the mistake. That's the mistake. If
All right,
you are
well,
in the
well,
perfect
how
house
do you-
and it's priced right, what are you looking for? A unicorn?
Well, what? Okay, you just said the buyer has no money
No, I said he didn't have money
to
for a
buy down his
down.
rate. He
Right.
has
Why
no
does
money
he
to
gotta
buy down his rate.
Because you're talking to a guy.
Qualify with the full rate.
You're talking to a guy right now that thinks money down and buy downs are a huge mistake for a consumer unless absolutely necessary to achieve an approval. That's from a lender's perspective, from a financial advisory perspective. And by the way, my daughter didn't take my advice and bought her rate down by 0.5 point.
Well, I had a threshold.
Right. But but you had an approval without the threshold, correct?
Probably.
Yes. So my point is, so you're like, and this is why I say and Dan, I honestly, I'm not picking on you. I am so glad you brought this up because this is what I'm talking about. Sometimes we talk ourselves out of a transaction, right? Don't suggest that Sydney should be suggesting a buy down if it's necessary. You should stay absolutely clear of that conversation. You should know what it is, because if Sydney calls you and says, hey, I suggested a buy down to your buyer for this reason, and the buyer calls you to get the opinion, you then know what she's talking about. But I believe in as least amount of money down as possible and as the least amount of buy down as possible for a buyer. And I'll tell you why. Because what's everybody saying the buyers are afraid of right now? Market appreciating, right? Okay. So same rule applies the other way, and I'll explain. Dino, I've had this conversation. If you're leveraging your home, right? If mortgaging your home, right? The only investment you have in that home is your down payment. It doesn't matter what the market does. You bought a payment. And you're going to be in that house for a period of time, which probably, if there was a depreciation, it comes back. So to me, if you've got a buyer that's mortgaging and they're saying, I'm afraid the market's going to go back, I would be like, talk to my lender. Let's work this deal out with the least amount of money out of your pocket. That way the market going backwards doesn't matter to you. Well, what do you mean it doesn't matter to you? You only lose money if you pay cash. Your payment's fixed. You bought the house you want at a payment you could afford. What it's worth on paper 6 months from now is irrelevant, because if it goes up in value, you can't spend it anyway, and you still got the same payment. And the reason I don't recommend buy downs is because all the economic indicators tell us is somewhere next year, after the morons raising the rates wake up to the fact that they've crashed the economy, they're going to start having to bring the rates down. You can't get your buy down back. You got to look, we do it with every buyer that we talk to on the mortgage side. If they want to talk about buying it down or the cost of a point or a point and a half, we do the point to break even. How many months is it going to cost me to break even? If you give me an extra $3,000 down, I'm saving you an extra $50 a month. That's how many months is that to break even?
Like 3 or 4 years.
60 months. Jerry got you.
Okay.
60 months. And the likelihood of me being able to refinance you to a better rate than this in 60 months, or you selling this house within 60 months is
Mhm.
much greater than you getting to the break-even point.
Mhm.
But talk to my lender and let them talk. Get out. These are the rabbit holes. These are the flat out rabbit holes. And so now I found I'm going to use Dan's example because I think this happens. I found the perfect house. It's priced right. But because the seller doesn't want to gift you money off of priced right, I'm going to go looking for somebody else to make a mistake. But oh, by the way, I'm going to go show Dean's property, who's an expert in the field because he's listed it. And Dean's like, what the fuck are you talking about, Dan? My guy doesn't have to discount this property. And Dan goes, well, then I'm going to look again. And then he goes to my property. I'm like, Dan, I'm not discounting the property. I priced it right. I priced it for market. Now, guess what? Dan's customers now pissed off at Dan. He's not mad at Dean. He's not mad at Tony. He thinks the seller's made a mistake, but he's mad at Dan. And you know who sells Dan's buyer a house? Tony. Because I get him on the phone. I'm like, the guy didn't understand the mortgage business. Let me get you with my lender. We'll go find you a house and put the least amount of money down as possible. And we'll get you in that house. You want to go back to that one you first saw? Did Dan show it to you? Because that's procuring cause. I can't show you that one. I'll show you another one. This is what's going on. This is why people aren't looking at houses right now. It's why when they look at them, they're not making an offer, because an agent doesn't know how to. Most agents don't know how to have these conversations, but others don't want to have these conversations for fear they'll lose the customer. And the fact of the matter is, you're probably going to lose 50% of the people you don't have the conversation with. You're going to win with some, because Dan wasn't on the call. He jumped on late. So just to be fair to Dan, we were talking about the difference between the salesperson perspective, the customer service perspective, or the combination perspective. Right. And I just think it's really hypercritical from an agent's perspective to focus on the task at hand, finding a house for the buyer in the shortest amount of time and getting them to closing before they wig out.
Gotcha.
That's the deal. And then partnering with, whether it be the mortgage person, you cannot listen. If you think that buyer comes to you with a pre-approval letter, and 90% of the people are not like us on the mortgage side, you're going to spin in your wheels, because the mortgage person is just afraid to have that conversation, or is not knowledgeable enough to have that conversation to put that $900,000 worth of deals together. So, I don't know, you got to be willing to at least consider what I'm talking about here, even if it makes you uncomfortable. Okay. And at the very least, I suggest in a traditional market, you put your big boy and your big girl sales shoes on and you go to work, right? But if you don't, if you say that's way too far out of that's outside of my comfort zone, then at least meet me halfway and have at least add the sales perspective into the customer service perspective. If that's where you're, and I don't know that anybody is, but if that's where you're funneling, if that's how you're functioning, and you can better analyze that now after this call. If you're functioning more as a customer service person than a salesperson, then please meet me halfway. I recommend diving into my side of the pool. It's heated, right? In the wintertime. But if you're a little nervous about that, then at least dip your toe in, you know, because here's what I would leave you with. There's going to be, it's November 21st. Is that accurate? Holy cow, that's crazy, right? It's November 21st. I can tell you right now, if you get the opportunity to talk to somebody this week, they are real. They're real. So dial for dollars, answer your phone as soon as it rings, whatever. If you are physically talking to a human being somewhere between now and Saturday, they are as real as can be, regardless of what comes out of their mouth. There ain't nobody calling anybody about real estate unless they're real right now. They're thinking about where they're going to dinner on Thursday. And maybe how Florida State's going to kick Florida's ass on Friday night.
Yeah,
Maybe
buddy.
So,
Hey, man, speaking the truth.
Very possible.
so, you know, we've got that big distraction. So if you talk to somebody there, but look, you got to gear up and look for the people willing to talk to you, because they're real. And there's a deal or two to be had for everybody on this call in December. There's a deal or two or three to be had for January. There's a deal or two to be had for February. And then we're back in season, and we'll be past the distractions. We'll be past the election. We'll be past all the other bullshit. And we're in a traditional market. But you got to sell. And, you know, yeah, I was going to go ahead.
No, I just so I am talking to two people, one today and one tomorrow, FISBOs. And like the guy I'm talking to today has already told me, like, I know they all say this, but he's like, I'm not listing it. And I'm like, okay, that's cool. You know, I just want to come by and look at it. And then he proceeds to tell me he has another unit in there. So there's two potential listings. And I'm like,
Yeah, well, I think the first thing you do is you take away the objection. That's the first thing you do. I get it. I'm not coming out. I'm a market expert. I got to find out what you got, because we've got a shortage of houses. We've got a 30-day supply of houses. I need to know what's out there. If I could bring you a buyer, you know, would you at least pay my commission? If he says no, okay, well then I got to get my buyer to pay your commission, whatever. So you go down that path. And then when you're standing in front of them, Dean, why are you not listing it? And then you go to work. Then you go to work. You can't go in with a foregone conclusion of why he should list it, because I don't know why he's not listing it. I know I'm going to get a better result than he is, but so that's that guy. Was there another one?
well, the guy for tomorrow, he actually called me back today. I was supposed to meet him on Saturday and he canceled, and he called me this morning and he said, I think I just want to list it. And I was like, oh my God, you know, I was like, that's a good call to get, but I need to talk to you about him, because I don't know. He's talking to me about an assumable mortgage and this and that, but he has one, or he has one that he wants the buyer to be able to assume.
Well, you can. They still got to qualify. I mean, that's fine. You just got, that's easy. Just get me the paperwork. We'll put it in the file, and we'll let your lender and the buyer will have to, but the buyer's not obligated to take on that. They might get a better, you don't know. So.
And don't they have to come with the cash?
Yeah,
Or
for sure.
equity line or something,
Yeah.
in other forms, they'd have to come with the difference.
Yeah. Does anybody have any other, like that? That's kind of like the points I wanted to make. I appreciate, Dan's participation there. That was very, very helpful, actually. Dean's participation. Anybody else have anything, questions, thoughts, anything that I could address? I don't like to keep you guys much past You know, it's an hour and 15 minutes. So anybody? As I've stated, so everybody's quiet. As I've stated, oh, go ahead. Kristen's got one more.
I just, like the one thing too is like the people start talking about at this time of year, well, it's the holidays, I just kind of, I'm gonna wait and,
What are you waiting for?
yeah, okay.
So it's the holidays. We promised we're not going to cancel Christmas. We're not going to be able to close on Christmas. And if you get in before the end of the year, you get, if there's a homestead exemption on the house, it stays with the house. So, and you can file for your homestead exemption. Buyers and sellers this time of year are real. So, yeah, I mean, I would say this, if you're on a treadmill with a buyer or a seller, give me a call. Let's talk it out. I mean, I know you do it and I think we have pretty good success with it. I know, Dan and I powwow here and there. Dustin does a good job of it. Mary's actually tapped into that here and there. If you're in that perpetual, that thing and you got an opportunity, don't let the opportunity get away. At least brainstorm with me and let's see if we could put something together that might help you. And I'd set some real reasonable and attainable goals. 2 transactions, try and get 2 between now and the end of the year. Try and get your vision for 2 in January and at least 2 in February, and then you'll be off to the races. So I'm around if you need me. If I don't see you or hear from you, happy Thanksgiving.
Okay, thanks,
Happy
Tony.
Thanksgiving.
See you guys.
Yeah.
See ya.
Who else was on the Zoom? It was Mary,